Okay, so we are graphing y equal -5 times sine of x over 4 up to one period. Also would like to find the amplitude, period, and hopefully label the x-axis. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at a function that you already know. Can you tell me what this function is that starts at the origin, but's going down to minimum point, going back to the x-axis or 0, then it's going to its max, coming down to the midline. If you say that function is y equal -sine x, you're absolutely right. So if you know this function, you could graph all the negative sine families. So all the sine family is negative, that are negative or has a negative outside or in the coefficient of the sine. So the coefficient of sine is negative, that means that they're starting at the 0 or initial point, going down to minimum, coming up to the midline, going up to the max, and going down again to the midline. It starts at the midline and it ends at the midline. So the first thing we're going to do is to write our function, and we can look at this. This is -5, so it definitely looks like negative sine x. The only difference is here we have a -1 and here we have a -5. And of course, if we look at the coefficient of x, here's 1/4, that means x is divided by 4. So the first thing we have to do is, our first step is to write our function as y equal a sine bx. This helps us to identify our a and b. So remember, the a is always the coefficient of sine and b is the coefficient of x. So our a in this problem that we have is really the coefficient of sine, which is -5, and b is really the coefficient of x, which is 1/4. Now that we know our a and b, we would like to find our amplitude. The amplitude for the function is the absolute value of a. So remember that a is equal to -5. So the absolute value of -5 is equal to 5. So what's really the meaning of the absolute, the amplitude? Okay, so the amplitude is basically telling us that when we start at the origin or the midline, we're going to go up to the maximum point, and the length from the midline to the maximum is really our amplitude. Or also you could say that, okay, going down to -5, the length of that is also 5, which is why we have the absolute value here. So it tells you that the distance can never be negative. So, or the length cannot be negative. So the amplitude is simply the distance from the midline to the highest point. Now the next step is that we want to also know what our period is. So the period for our function is 2 pi divided by b. So in this case, 2 pi divided by 1/4, because b is equal to 1/4. And if we divide 2 by 1/4, we're going to get 8, because we're going to write 2 and we're going to flip the 1/4, and the 4 from the denominator goes to the numerator, and 2 times 4 is 8. Now that we know our amplitude, we would like to find the x scale and label our x-axis. In order to do that, we write the period. Now remember, the period is 8 pi, and we have to divide by 4. So the question is, why do we have to divide it by 4? Why not by 5? Why not by 10? Okay, can we divide it by a different number? The answer is absolutely not. We would like to remember that, I would like you to remember that the sign starts at the origin and then it reaches its period after 4 values. So let's count. 1. Okay, so we start 1, 2, 3, 4. We're starting at the origin, we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's why we always would like to divide. So after 4 values, we're going to reach the sine function reaches its period. So now we would like to graph y equal to -5 sine x over 4. So just take a look at it. A sine function, when it's negative or positive, starts at the origin. So let's label our origin. Now the question is that do we have to go up or down? So that is really important question, because if you just know that, then you could get the rest of the graph right. So you could tell that then it's a negative, so we have to go down. But you could also see that a negative sine x is going down and positive sine x is going up. So at this point we are going to find the next value that we have. So the graph of the function, it starts at 0 and it's going down till it reaches the minimum point. And then it goes back to the midline. So we are really following this graph right here, going back to the midline, and then it reaches the maximum point. So it reaches the maximum point. Our maximum is really 5. And then it goes down to the midline or x-axis. Now go ahead, I give you a minute to graph it. So make sure that you don't draw any straight line here. So this is like a curve. It reaches the midline and now it's going back up till it reaches its max. Once it reaches max, it's going to go down till it reaches the midline. Very nice. So we started at 0 and we went down to min, going back to midline, going up to the max, and then midline again. Just a quick note, your graph is always going to be between these two values, okay, between 5 and -5, which is really the range of the graph. So let's recap what we have right here. We always want to make sure that when we are given a graph of the function, look at the behavior of the function. So we have to know the parent function for the sine, which is sine x. And if it's negative, it's just going to go down and then go up, then going back to 0. If this was a positive, instead of going down, it will go up to the 1, and then it's going to go down to the midline, and then it's going to go down till it hits the minimum point, and then going up to our midline again. And so in this case, it's negative, it's going down to minimum point. Once you know this, once you know that one point, these are periodic function, and you could graph the rest. So if you want to do it up to 2 period, you could just continue again, just same thing, so the graph keeps on going. Or you could go this way and do the rest one, okay, going exactly the same thing, and then ends at the same point. So thank you for watching, and I would definitely do more examples in futures. So have a great day.